All right, welcome in. As I don't know, many of you realize this, but the ACC Big Ten Challenge is dead. That's correct. But instead, we've got something known as the ACC SEC Challenge now taking center stage. And that gets underway here tonight with 7 matchups, plenty of games to talk about here in college hoops. And we've got you covered. 3 big game breakdowns, 3 best bets coming from 3 of the best college basketball handicappers at WagerTalk.com. As we welcome back in Mr. Mizzou himself, Adam Trigger, ready to roll. Brian Leonard in the house, ready to cash a few tickets, as is Mr. Rob Vino, ready to roll here. No more ACC Big Ten Challenge here, guys. Kind of like this one instead, though, with the ACC and the SEC kicking off here tonight. And Trig, we're going to start with you because, well, you're wearing an SEC jersey, so I'm going to assume we are going to get to that game at some point. But let's start with the other jersey. I know you don't. It's not far away. I know it's got to be in the same room with you as Syracuse is taking on LSU here tonight. If I'm not mistaken, I read these 2 teams haven't played each other. It feels like in a minute, in a long time. But it's a battle, and they both could use a win here. So what gives in this game here tonight?
Yeah, people keep asking me if I'm going to this game. I'm not. If I turn my camera around right now to point out the window, just a random blizzard. It's just snowing and it's a miserable day. I'm probably not. And honestly, neither of these teams are very good. That's probably why I'm not going. Like, I'll get to a couple Q's games this year, but this isn't going to be one of them. And let's start the handicap there. Both of these teams are a work in progress. LSU is in year 2 of a total rebuild. Syracuse is in year 1 post Jim Boeheim of the Adrian Autry era. It's a tongue twister right there. And I guess when I looked at this game and looked at all the sort of like deficiencies with these 2 teams, at least that I've seen thus far, I was very surprised that the total being as high as it is. And so I would look to play under here if I was getting involved in this one. Like, listen, I try to make a case for Cuse. I try to make a case for LSU, but really they both have big time issues. And I think the issues stem more on the offensive end. Remember, this is an LSU team that thought they were going to have Jalen Cook this year, the transfer from Tulane, who did not get his waiver. Him at the point guard position would have been a game changer. And you look at LSU and the offense looks very disjointed, a lot of turnovers, somewhat explains a loss to Nicholls State as a 20.5-point favorite. Turnovers, sloppy play, a lot of what I've seen from LSU. And, that type of that they can get away with that and their athleticism getting them over the hump against teams like North Florida and North Texas. But even with Syracuse having some issues, it's probably not going to get it done on the road at the Dome, they're still going to get a great crowd there tonight. They pretty much always do. Syracuse's offense is awful. Like, I can't believe what I'm watching when I watch this team like on offense. I really thought that I was going to like the Syracuse like makeup of this team this year, but the offense is essentially everyone just stands around and waits for Judah Mintz to make a play or waits for JJ Starling to make a play. And no one can shoot on this team. I mean, they're 308th nationally right now in 3-point shooting percentage, hitting just 28.8% from 3. Some of that has to do with poor shooters, but the other part is no one's ever open. Every 3 is contested, and a big reason for that is because there's a lot of standing around in the half-court offense, and they wait for Judah Mintz to make a play, or they wait for JJ Starling, who's an atrocious 3-point shooter, by the way. One thing I underestimated, Joe, was Joe Girard's not being on this team anymore, what that was going to do to the offense. And Syracuse has no one that can stretch the defense at all. At least Girard, I never loved him as a player, but at least the guy could just hit threes and you had to respect his ability to hit threes. JJ Starling can't hit a three. He was a bad three-point shooter at Notre Dame last year. He's hitting like 8% from three this year. And it's because most of the shots are tough shots. And Judah Mintz isn't a very good shooter either. So, in athletic-wise, like when they've played some of these lesser teams, they've been able to sort of fly up and down the floor or get easy buckets. But you have to remember, this is a Syracuse team that doesn't have Jesse Edwards either. And he just used to absolutely clean things up, where he would just, take a miss and put it right back up for a bucket. So I just don't see how there's going to be efficient enough offense here for this game to crack 150. I'm not great at totals. I rarely give totals out. I don't feel like I typically have a good gauge on totals, and basketball can be tricky with like how much variance there is. But I see two teams that make a lot of mistakes and aren't super efficient offensively. So 150 seems like a lot here. Plus, you have to take into consideration that LSU playing at the JMA Wireless Dome, it is going to be a little bit of a culture shock for them. They never come up here. It's coming out and shooting in that building is not always easy if you haven't been there. So I'll call this one under. I think the number's too big. It was 150, even at like 149, where some of the other books sit right now. Still think it's too many points. Probably an ugly game that stays under.
I mean, give him credit. That was an impressive win against Chaminade. Okay, we're going to move on. Let's go to another one of these big matchups here tonight. Maybe the matchup of the evening, in which this certainly has all the buzz around it. Bryan Leonard taking a look at Kentucky, who welcomes in Miami to the house there. Jim Larinaga and the crew, straight from their Bahamas tournament win over Kansas State, now head to what is a big test for both of these teams here. I was thinking the total was going to be like 220. It's not, but it may very well end that way. What are we doing in this game here tonight, Brian?
I'm going to try to be as brief as I possibly can. I do have some shows to do tomorrow, and I want to get a little sleep before I get to that. Just making fun of the two guys I'm with because they're very long-winded. Got good information.
No, I'm waiting. No, you just go ahead and do it because I'm waiting for the viewers to eventually get to Rob Vino and then come back to that. So go ahead.
That's right. They like to talk. I'll give them the time. Yeah, Miami, Kentucky. Miami's gotten off to a nice 5-0 start, but they've been favored in every one of their games. This is a step up for the Hurricanes, as well as their first true road game of the season. Miami won the ACC last year en route to a 29-8 overall record. While much is expected out of the Hurricanes, they look to be a little bit weaker on the bench this year, and they had problems with rebounding last year. That was a major concern. I think it's going to be that same way again this year. Kentucky's a team I like this year. Obviously, they're very young. They're always very young. They're 5-1 with the only loss coming to Kansas, 89-84. The Wildcats have not been tested other than that game, as they've been a double-digit favorites in every other contest they played in. So this is a learning experience for all of us, I think, by having Kentucky play a very good Miami team here. But after a few down years, the Wildcats look to be solid once again this season. They have the highest-rated freshman class in college basketball, but as usual, the Wildcats are very young. But they do have two fifth-year seniors in the front court, and that'll ease the transition a little bit. Kentucky should have a nice edge, as I mentioned, in rebounding and at the rim in this game. I thought the 7 was a little bit cheap. I know it opened up at about 6.5. It's been bet up to 7, but I still like them at this number.
Looking at Kentucky at home, should be a lot of fun here, and it's hopefully won't be the last time we get to see those two teams play. Hopefully in March, that'll be a lot of fun as well. All right, Mr. Vino, before we get there, I do want to remind everyone that not only you, but Bryan Leonard as well as Mr. Adam Trigger here, available at WagerTalk.com. Best bets are up, locked, and loaded, ready to go here today. And if you happen to be new to us here on this, just happen to be swinging by YouTube and being like, wow, look at this college basketball stuff. Yes, hit the subscribe button because nobody's got more content when it comes to college hoops, NBA, college football. We got championship week 13 of the NFL season, NBA games. We've got you covered here. All head-to-head matchups, plus best bets across the sports betting landscape all week here at your disposal. So just go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you're joining us live, you guys know the routine there in the chat room. Hit that like button as we welcome in Rob Vino here, and love it. Max Asmus not walking through that door for Oral Roberts anytime soon, but they do have to take on Kansas State, it feels like. This is, I think last time I saw 14, 15, somewhere in that ballpark. Kansas State, any bar brawl? Nope, no bar brawls last night, so nobody else is suspended, Vino. What are we doing with K-State at this point?
First off, how dare Brian Leonard, my good friend, use up 3.5 minutes that could have been devoted to me and Adam? I mean,
exactly.
Come on, give us a break around here. Let's look at it. I'm going to look at it from the total perspective. The polar opposite of Adam, right? That's the way I see them best is totals rather than sides. So maybe we can get something going here. And you're right, Joe. I mean, obviously, there's no surprise. There's less firepower on Oral Roberts without Max Asmus. I mean, they did, when Paul Mills left, they did go ahead inside the staff and take Russell Springman, elevate him to head coach. But he comes from, before he got to Oral Roberts, he came from a little bit different stock, right? 15 years under Rick Barnes. That's not exactly Paul Mills' tempo. And then, coached at USD under Lamont Smith for another 3 years where there were slow tempo teams. So when he came here, kind of got the full gamut. And I think he wants to play the way Mills played. But the team needs to come together again without Max Asmus. They're 150th in adjusted offensive efficiency, number 202 in tempo. 5 games played so far for ORU, only 65 to 74 points scored in all 5 of those games. But 4 of them really were slow, let's say average to slow paced teams. The one game where they played a profile team that kind of does what Kansas State does was when they played Missouri State. And that game wound up getting to 153. Missouri State likes to go quicker. They shoot real well. That's more reminiscent of what Jerome Tang's team wants to do. And boy, since the South Dakota State game, Kansas State's offense has been on fire. Right now, they sit as the number 53 team in adjusted tempo. But since South Dakota State, they put up 91, 73, 83, and 100. They're a little bit more cohesive now. They've got a lot of transfers on this team. The 2 biggies, Tyler Perry, the point guard from North Texas, actually leads the team in scoring and assists right now, which is what they need him to do. And Arthur Kaluma from Creighton, the number 3 scorer. So they seem to be getting it together offensively, getting up and down the floor, scoring a lot of points. I think that in this case, they can probably dictate what's going to happen here, Joe. I don't see Oral Roberts walking into this gym and slowing K-State down whatsoever. I think this game will be played at pace for 40 minutes. Oral Roberts likely to fall into it the way they did against Missouri State. We saw a lot of movement in this total. I think it was 151 opener, and we're looking at 55.5 now. So people jumped it early, got a better price, but I still think there's wiggle room. I mean, I could see something in the 88 to 70 range here. So I'm going to try it over 155.5, thinking that Kansas State leads the way and Oral Roberts follows. And if it gets to, double-digit stage, hopefully it's even close and you get some free throws. But if it gets to double-digit stage, I think the garbage points at the end and the tempo will still be there.
All right, look at that. Points, and more points. Expecting it here tonight with Kansas State walking in Oral Roberts. Should be a fun one there. So 3 big game breakdowns. We got 3 best bets coming up for tonight's slate. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you are new to us here. And give us that thumbs up, those of you joining us live here on the broadcast as we welcome back in at the top, Mr. Adam Trigger. I'm guessing this is the show and tell time. This is the point of the movie where you are wearing the Missouri shirt for a reason, and I'm going to imagine that reason is because you're probably backing them tonight against Pitt. What are we doing here?
Yeah, Joe, that's sort of my thing. I go to all these campuses, collect merch, and then when I have a bet on them, I wear it on the show. So yes, I am betting Missouri tonight. Before I get into the breakdown of this, though, I do have a 5% college basketball play that goes a little bit later than this one, but this one's a 4% that I'm going to give you for free. And I just think that we've got a little case of undervalued versus overvalued here colliding and giving us a really nice number on the undervalued visitors, Missouri. So listen, I mean, Missouri there's not that big of a difference in my opinion from last year to this year with Missouri and sort of the makeup of the team. Dennis Gates comes over from Cleveland State. He basically brings in all these guys from the transfer portal and coaches up offense. So when I did my we talked about Missouri. I did my preview for Missouri with Kai McKeon from Three Man Weave, who went to Missouri. He kind of, explained, and we went into like Missouri's. They're never going to be a great rebounding team. They're going to give the other team they're not going to be that concerned with being like poor rebounders, stuff like that. Dennis Gates is going to focus on what he's good on, which is coaching offense. And last year, the reason Missouri was so good, in spite of some of the areas where they struggled rebounding, was because they were very efficient offensively. But I went back to last year, and there was still the early season kind of struggles as they figured out, as they got their reps in and figured out how to get it going. They struggled with Southern Indiana, only won that game by 6, struggled with Penn, struggled with like Southeast Missouri State, some really poor teams. They just happen to end up on the right end of those games, unlike the Jackson State game a couple weeks ago where they lost as a 22-point underdog. Had that buzzer beater for Jackson State not gone in, we're probably not even talking about that game right now. But it did, and suddenly Missouri has this ugly loss on their resume, losing as a 20-point favorite to Jackson State, which I think has generated some value on the visitors here because, it's also their second loss of the season. They lost to Memphis in what's a competitive matchup, of course, but still a loss earlier in the year. Pitt, on the other hand, has just blasted like inferior team after inferior team. So, they've got blowout win after blowout win against the likes of like Binghamton, Florida Gulf Coast, Jacksonville, NCA&T is a terrible team this year. They finally get tested on a neutral Florida, and they get crushed. So, as good as Pitt has looked at times, I have to think that some of it has to do with just playing, inferior competition on either home in either their home gym or on neutral floors in the early going. So, I just trust Dennis Gates. I like him as a head coach. I think that going forward, Missouri will probably continue to improve because even though there's a lot of new guys to the program here, this is still a group of veteran upperclassmen just from different programs. So I think the offensive efficiency will continue to improve, and Missouri's results will probably continue to get better. And Pitt, on the other hand, they've got a good team, but remember last year they were not supposed to be the team they turned into last year. Going to the NCAA tournament, winning multiple games, sort of coming out of nowhere in what wasn't a very good ACC to be like the team that just kept finding ways to win games and suddenly was finishing up near the top of the conference. So I have Pitt circled for a little bit of regression. They lost a few guards. And then, of course, the Dior Johnson, I think Capel thought he might get him back at some point this summer, but he didn't. He ended up leaving the school. He barely played last year anyway, but still they got stuck with, multiple freshmen in the backcourt playing the point guard position. And that started to show up against Florida, the one sort of real opponent they played this year. 14 turnovers, and that Pitt team against Florida didn't look like the Pitt team against NCA&T or even an improved Binghamton team, Joe, which we'll talk about at a different time. So I took the points with Missouri. I just thought it was too many. This feels like a pretty decent game, in my opinion. And even if Missouri's close game luck goes against them, because they were real lucky last year, they won every one possession game, won games at the buzzer. Even if it goes against them, I still think it stays within this big number. So Missouri plus 6.5. I actually got this at +7 for clients. Either way, 4% play. I think this is a pretty competitive game.
Yeah, the kid on Pitt, what is his name? Bobo, they call him Carlton Carrington. Love this kid, Trig. I mean, he's going to be the kid is a lot of fun, but you contain him. I'm not really sure the surrounding pieces are going to have enough to be beating anybody by distance. But that kid's a lot of fun to watch if you haven't seen him already.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't. He's a fantastic player. He's one of the two freshmen. He is the freshman point guard, and he's awesome. But again, I need to see the execution more in a game like this, because you look at the games that they've played. The one team that can really play forced them into 14 turnovers, and they lost by 15. So I think Missouri can be more like Florida than like NCA&T or Binghamton or FGCU. So that's kind of where I ended up on Missouri here.
I love the great litmus test here, but that kid is not going to get nearly enough press given what Kentucky's freshmen are going to bring to the table and the exposure they're going to get. But should be a good one here tonight there. Don't forget, does have a 5% play up at his page at WagerTalk.com. And Brian Leonard, I know, is locked and loaded. The good news is, by the last time we spoke to you, Brian, you did have time enough to get a nap, I hope, because the next shows are coming up, and you did get to go through Vino and Trig there. So I hope you enjoyed the nap. Now let's talk a best bet as well as what you've got coming up at WagerTalk.com. And are you sucking up to our producer, Robert, by picking this Texas Southern game, or are you going to bury his hopes and dreams right now?
Well, they're a 31.5-point underdog. I wouldn't hold my breath. Let's just put it that way. As for what I have up on the site, this play right here is my only college basketball game. I do have a couple of NBA games, NHL games. 8-1 run in the NHL, number one again this season, number one the last 6 seasons. If you're betting NHL and you're not getting it from us, you may be making a mistake there. But let's get back to this college basketball game here. Terrible start to the season for the Tigers, who is the nickname of Texas Southern, in case anybody is unsure about that. But they don't play their first home game until December 21st. I don't know who scheduled this, but it's a tough way to start the season, playing on the road all the time. They're 0-6 on the year, and they face the likes of New Mexico, Arizona State, Virginia, Creighton, Oral Roberts, and Drake. That's 5 of 6 games against top 100 competition, and Oral Roberts, who has a lot of success in their past. Now they take on the best of the bunch with this Purdue Boilermakers team. Texas Southern is an inexperienced bunch this season after winning the conference tournament and taking part in the playing game a year ago. This team will have a tough time competing in the SWAC this year. Keep in mind, they were only 14-21 last year before they get into the conference tourney. They just got hot at the right time and made it to the big dance. They're led by point guard PJ Henry, who really runs this ship, along with a very good rebounding club that could surprise lesser foes. Unfortunately, they're playing a team out of the Big Ten, and not only a team, the team out of the Big Ten in Purdue. Purdue's gotten off to just the opposite start, 6-0 record, having played the likes of Xavier, Gonzaga, Tennessee, and Marquette. The two lesser teams on their schedule, they won both those games and covered those also. So they played very well to start the season. The reason why I like Purdue here is conference action starts on December 1st against Northwestern. So they're playing a lesser team before they play the first game of their conference season, which means the bench players are going to get more minutes tonight. They may be a while before some of these bench players get to play again. Now, normally, that's not a good thing, but this is an elite team and a quality program, and they recruit well. And I would have to say, for the most part, their bench players are a very good bunch and may even be better when they get on the court. That's what I'm looking forward to. I think Purdue gets out to a good lead at the half and lets the bench play the second half. Now, normally in this situation, they just slow the pace of the game and rest some of the players a little bit. But I think this game, when the bench players get extended minutes, which I think they will, they'll be able to dominate the lesser players on this other team. That keeps the game flowing and takes away the contentment for the host. So I actually like Purdue better this game, minus the 31.5, because I think they will play some of their bench guys more minutes and they'll get a chance to get into a rhythm. So we're going to play Purdue and lay the big number here against Roberts' team.
So you're saying there's a chance. All right, Robert.
Always
That's
a
all you needed to
chance.
hear. There you go. There's a
Ask,
chance there.
ask Steve Fezzik if there's ever a chance betting an underdog against the Purdue team.
Yes.
Yeah, he had gotten in a lot of trouble that way. But I think Purdue's going to win
Matt
this
Painter.
one.
Yes, it is Matt Painter. Yes, we love Matt Painter when he's expected to win. All right, Robert. Sorry about that. For those of you new here, of course, Robert, our producer, he is a grad of Texas Southern, although you will never catch him at any of their basketball games because it appears that they don't ever play any at home for some reason. Rob Vino, what is going on here, my man? You are going to wrap up the best bets. And I don't know if a lot of people saw this because I love this game here tonight. And I know you're going to go to total. I like the side. But what many people won't realize, I think, is that there's a new era in Ole Miss basketball. And boy, oh boy, we welcome back. The Beard is back in college hoops as Chris Beard. Sorry, Texas. But yes, Ole Miss is more than happy to have him here. Something tells me this is not going to be as up-tempo as maybe some people would think it's going to be, even though NC State loves to run there. What are you doing with the total in this one?
Yeah, I think in coaching circles, when a game is on the line, Joe, Chris Beard is the polar opposite of Matt Painter. So we can talk about Matt Painter later in meaningful games. But right now, let's talk about Beard, right? I mean, first of all, this is the first true road game for NC State all season long, and it's not that friendly of a venue this season with Chris Beard taking over at the helm. NC State, when we last saw them, they were in Las Vegas. They were playing BYU. That game was a blowout first half. Looked like NC State could do no wrong. DJ Horn and company were going crazy. Next thing you know, BYU, much like the night before against Arizona State, decided to start putting those threes in the basket, and that's when that game turned around drastically. BYU shoots 70% in the second half. They make 9 threes. Next thing you know, they win going away. But Ole Miss is not a consistent three-point shooting team. They don't shoot it well whatsoever. They've had a couple of games out of their 5 where they shot at 50% or better. The other 3, it's 25% or worse against this NC State defense. I would venture to say that it would be on the 25% to worse side. Here's a Chris Beard quote real quick after his team's last game. We got a long ways to go. It's early in the season. I thought our defensive rebounding and offensive rebounding in the second half separated us a little bit. Here's a coach who's still trying to implement his system, trying to get Ole Miss out of old habits into his habits. It's not that easy to take a team and ask them to stall the game to the point where you're 331st in adjusted tempo in the nation. So a little bit of a learning curve for Ole Miss. The 2 games, Joe, that Ole Miss did shoot 50% from 3, they had to scrape out a 1-point win against Temple, even though they shot better than 50% from 3, and they had to scrape out a 1-point win against Detroit. So the 2 games where they shot it real well, they didn't even win by margin. They're 0-5 against the spread so far this year. That Temple game where they shot it so well, both from the field and from 3, is the only game this season that they've gone over this total that we're looking at tonight of 144.5. Otherwise, the closest they've been is 139. That was the game they played against Detroit, where again they shot 50%. So I don't expect them to shoot the 3 that well tonight. And we expect them to be able at home to dictate tempo for at least long stretches of this game. This is quite the contrast. Kevin Keats wants to get up and down with NC State. The other side wants to stall him. I'll give the edge to the home team here. Again, it's the first true road game for NC State. Will these guys be good in this environment? I'm not sure, Joe. I think that you're going to find a lot better defense in this game. As you mentioned, a lot slower tempo in this game for the better part of the 40 minutes. And again, this was a total that was picked on early by early money, pushing it from 48, I think, all the way down to 44.5. But there still seems to be room here in a game where the winner may not get the 70. So I'm going to play this one under 144.5. NC State, first true road game at Ole Miss and Chris Beard.
I can't wait to see Ole Miss this year because they still don't have, Rob, their 2 best transfers, the kid from Georgetown, Murray, and former, and you know this, Trig, the old Oklahoma State center there, Moose, which I was wondering where the hell he ended up going. And apparently he's heading over to Chris Beard, but they're not even available yet. They're still awaiting to clear eligibility. So should be a very interesting, once he can put that entire band together, it'll be interesting to see what Beard and Ole Miss can put together. But it's an under for Vino here tonight. Don't expect a lot of tempo in this one. The one who dictated is going to win here tonight for Ole Miss. And there you got it, guys. You got 3 big game breakdowns. You got 3 best bets. You heard Rob tell you, heard Brian Leonard tell you, heard Adam Trigger tell you. Trig's got a 5% best bet ready to go. You know the NHL is on Brian Leonard's plate here, so opportunities to hop on board with him, as well as Rob Vino with his best bets here tonight. Plenty to make it a very profitable Tuesday here as we get ready to say goodbye to November and welcome in December. But we're just getting started here, of course, at WagerTalk TV this week. Plenty more head-to-head games to break down for you. We'll be back again tomorrow. And you don't have to wait. Just go ahead and click on that video on your screen right now. You'll get access to all the rest of the big matchups coming up this week here from all of our WagerTalk handicappers, including best bets, just a click away. On behalf of Adam, Rob, and Brian, appreciate the time. Best of luck with your plays. We'll see you again tomorrow.